Help support the show by joining the Patreon or becoming a YouTube member. Also, hit that like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content. Okay, it's time to do a position review for the Cleveland Browns. This time, we're going to be talking about wide receiver. To me, I tend to have a bit of a different opinion about this room than I think most people do. I think, in my opinion, people spend a lot of energy panicking over the wide receiver room, which I understand, right? We're going to talk about why that panic is there. But I think more of that energy should be applied towards running back and maybe offensive line instead of all of the energy being at like wide receiver, right? Like everybody is concerned about wide receiver. Everybody is pointing to wide receiver and saying it's a panic situation. I don't think it is. It's just not a very good wide receiver room, or a very deep wide receiver room. And yeah, if you get an injury here or there, it's not going to be great. But even great teams at wide receiver are always one or two injury away from likely a disaster. So that to me, I like whenever somebody says we're an injury or two away from being very terrible, it's like every single position group in the NFL is an injury or two away from being very terrible. It's like me acting like the Chiefs have a bad quarterback situation because I'm like, well, they're one injury away from being an awful quarterback room. You know, they're one injury away from having to play Gardner Minshew, right? Or two injuries away from having to play whoever. You're always a couple of injuries away from disaster in the NFL. That's just how the game goes. You're only allowed to keep 53 people on the roster and you have a salary cap. There's going to be sacrifices that are made at different points. So to me, yes, the depth in this wide receiver room is not great, but I think it's fine for what it is. It's not exciting. I'm not like jumping up and down, but given that they're going to go play more 11 and 12 personnel, which is like one running back, 11 is one running back, one tight end, 12, one running back, two tight ends, right? The 1-2, all that shit. That is what they are going to be doing, which means less wide receivers on the field. Less five wide. They're going to use some of the tight ends as wide receivers at times. I imagine they're going to supplement what they don't have in wide receivers with tight ends that they want to get targets to, with running backs that they want to get targets to. I think this is a very easy room to make up the difference in. Jeudy is at the top of this room. I think he has played himself into a point to where you can consider him a number one wide receiver. Is he at the top of number one wide receivers? No, but is he one of the best 32 receivers in the NFL? I certainly think so. After the season that he gave you last year. Going to be really useful in the Kevin Stefanski offense, especially if they go back to stock, because he's really good with yak situations, really good with timing, all that stuff. The only thing with Jerry Jeudy, catching through contacts, never been a strength of his, right? You're not going to throw him a bunch of 50-50 balls, things like that. And he needs to structure to be successful. If you have a quarterback who wants to get out of structure, he's not going to be successful. You have a quarterback willing to play in that structure, he's going to be more useful for you. And luckily for him, Kevin Stefanski offense thrives on playing in structure, right? So it'll be likely that there's a heavy emphasis on playing in structure. And I think it'd be fine. Cedric Tillman is who I have right now at wide receiver number 2. Ideally, I think the Browns want Deontay Johnson here at number 2, but I don't know if that gamble's going to work. I did a whole video about why I'm not a big believer in that gamble working out. Not saying I fault the Browns for trying. I think it's fine for them to try, but if you're asking me, July 3rd, 2025, like, do I think Deontay Johnson is going to be what they hope he's going to be? And I think the answer is no there, right? But I think they hope that Deontay can take that second wide receiver spot, but I think it will likely be Cedric Tillman. Now, the big question with Cedric Tillman is, who is Cedric Tillman, right? And when he played in his rookie year, it was a bit of a mess. He didn't look like he knew where to go all the time. Seemed like all the quarterbacks were yelling at him for not being in the right place. And that seemed to trickle in to the start of 2024, where in the first 6 weeks, my man got 5 targets. And it was like, oh, it's over for Cedric Tillman. His career is cooked. But then they traded Amari Cooper. They gave him more playing time. And in the 5 weeks that he was healthy, he got 44 targets, 26 receptions, 330 yards and 3 touchdowns. Now, some of you might be thinking to yourselves, it's not that impressive. Well, if we average that out per 17 games, that's 150 targets, that's 1,100 yards receiving, so over 1,000, and 10 touchdowns. It's a damn good season if you average it out over 17 games. The problem is he only played 5, and a 5-game sample is not enough to tell you what somebody would do in 17 games if they were healthy. But it's enough to where you're intrigued about if this guy could be 1,000-yard wide receiver, because I don't think it's impossible for him to be 1,000-yard wide receiver. Unfortunately, we did not get to see him much because he got the concussion at the end of the 2024 season. So we didn't get to see him be able to build on this as the season went on. And also, just worth pointing out that this boom in receiving production coincided with the injury of Deshaun Watson, which is the case with pretty much every other wide receiver on that team last year. So maybe having a different quarterback in there, maybe having somebody like a Joe Flacco in there is to the benefit of Cedric Tillman now at this point of his career, him being in year 3. All of that being said, I don't know what to do with Cedric. I think he is a better upside bet than most people are giving him credit for. I think a lot of people are just looking at Cedric Tillman as a failure. I think there's a strong chance, a better than nothing chance that he could become a starting number 2 wide receiver, somebody who can get you 600 to 800 yards in a season, maybe even more than that. We'll see. Deontay Johnson, obviously a former 1,000-yard wide receiver, a former number 1 wide receiver to the Pittsburgh Steelers. There's just questions about like if this guy is at the right place mentally to be able to perform physically to the capabilities that he's demonstrated. Something has happened with him where a ton of organizations have deemed him toxic for whatever reason. Browns have to figure out if that's going to happen in Cleveland. Deontay has to figure out if that's going to happen in Cleveland. So, he's a huge question mark. I don't even feel comfortable really counting him down for anything because there's a good chance that he just gets cut, right? I know people are like, well, if he just gives you low production, I'm not worried about his ability to produce. I'm worried about his ability to stay on the roster. And his ability to stay on the roster has not been great, not because he can't produce, but because something is going on with him and these staffs where they don't feel like he is a benefit to have in the building, even while he's producing. So got to figure that one out, right? Jamari Thrash, we'll see. Second year, right? Not much to really dig out of his first year. I liked him coming out of Louisville and Georgia State, but we'll see what happens with Jamari Thrash. David Bell, I like David Bell as like a 5th or 4th wide receiver, but that's a pretty disposable position. And here's the issue with the bottom of this wide receiver room, right? We're talking about from Cedric Tillman on down. There ain't going to be that many opportunities. They're going to use Jerry Jeudy in the slot a ton. They're going to use Cedric Tillman at the X a ton. So really that 3rd wide receiver spot is to be the Z. And the Z is the cardio position for the Cleveland Browns, right? Like Mike Woods has ran that cardio before. David Bell's not really a good fit to run that cardio. Jamari Thrash has run that cardio before, and DeAndre Carter has run that cardio before. So that's really what that slot is going to be for anybody rotating in and out. So there's not going to be a ton of opportunity for production there, which is why I don't think that this wide receiver room has to be the deepest in the world if the Browns are going to play the way that they play. Now, if they're in empty a ton and they're putting out 5 wide receivers, this is an awful wide receiver room to go 5 wide in. But if they are planning to stay in, 11 and 12 most of the time and playing a lot more 12, maybe even sprinkling in a couple plays a game of 13, okay, this makes sense. I mean, like the Browns have been teasing a lot of 22 and 21, which is 2 running backs in the backfield, right? Which again takes a wide receiver off the field. 2 running backs, 2 tight ends, you do the math, there's not going to be more than 1 wide receiver on the field there. So, the Browns have been showing a lot of personnel packages that demonstrate that they're not going to have a ton of these guys on the field at the same time. So that makes me more lenient on the lack of depth here. I think what matters is how good is your top, and is your top good enough to sustain you. I think Jerry Jeudy is a pretty good number 1 wide receiver in the NFL. And then Cedric Tillman, if he works out and plays the way that he played from week 7 to 12, I think you got something there. And then you have enough pieces back there to where you could fill in here or there if you need to, and supplement with what you have in the tight end room. I don't think this room is as bad as everybody makes it out to be. I don't think it's a good room. I think it's a C room. I give it a C. Maybe if you push me on it, they play more empty. I put a C minus on it, but I'll put a C on this. I would say that. But that's the wide receiver review. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.